Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom with our host, Bob Olson, who will now introduce today's show and speaker.
WCAT Radio presents Rivers of Living Water, a program about how to grow in holiness and have a more intimate relationship with God. Jesus said, "Come with me and drink, and out of this heart will flow rivers of living water." This is Mary Schwarz. Mary, welcome back.
Thank you. One of the ways Jesus fulfills his promise to give us living water is through the gift of contemplative prayer. The Church says contemplative prayer is not just for the great saints, but it's a gift that God wants to give to all of us. We'll be talking about the virtues we need to grow in and how to pray so that we can have a more intimate relationship with God and obtain this gift of contemplative prayer, this living water, which transforms us more and more into the likeness of Christ. Our show today is about pornography addiction and how to overcome it. We have two guests joining us. Psychologist Peter Kleponis is an expert on pornography and sex addiction. He travels throughout the country educating people on how to win the battle against pornography. He has written 2 books about the subject, and he's the founder of Integrity Restored, a wonderful resource for individuals, spouses, and families affected by pornography, and pastors who want to help their parishioners. The website is integrityrestored.com. We're also being joined today by Dino Haynes. Dino is a longtime member of Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous and a practicing Catholic whose life is no longer made unmanageable by pornography.
Hello.
Dr. Kleponis, are you with us? No, okay. Dino,
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how your personal story and how it was that you became addicted to, I don't know, pornography or love or whatever, how you would define that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. First, thank you for having me on the show, and it's always good to talk to you. You're one of my favorite people in the whole world.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, as far as when I became addicted to sex was, at a real early age, probably around 5. I used to just hump everything, and I would get away with it. I would hump the same things that some of my other friends would do, but they would get made fun of for it, and I wouldn't. Pretty much because I was better looking than they were, to tell you the truth. So I got a path, and that path really kind of over the years.
You got a pass? You mean from the people?
Yeah, from people who used to torment other kids for doing perverted things.
Mm-hmm.
I was allowed, and I took that path and I ran with it. That pretty much manifested itself and basically reared its ugly head, and I became, I became addicted to sex. I would sneak into pools after hours. I would hump pool jets. I would sneak into my older brother's room. And he had I remember he had this calendar from a strip club. I would go in there and I would hump that while my family is, are all out in the other room. I was just, constantly doing that because it became a way for me to escape the uncomfortable feelings that I was going through.
Yeah, and can you tell us a little bit about the circumstances in your life that you were having to escape from?
Yeah, sure. Alcoholic father abandoned us when I was about 1.5. So single mother raised us, met my sister and myself, and until the age of 5, she met my late stepfather. And he was just a really, really good guy. He had one born son. He had one born son, and he was that son was my idol growing up. He was my god. I wanted to be just like him. I wanted to act like him, walk like him, talk like him, because he got a lot of girls. all my idols growing up were my idols because they got a lot of girls. And that's all I equated getting girls with being a man. So the more girls, the bigger the man. The more worth I had. As a result, I didn't get any girls, and I turned to porn. And then when the internet porn hit the scene, it was good night. I didn't leave my room for months.
When roughly did internet pornography really get going?
With the birth of the internet, about 10 years after that. Like, the internet was born in '96 or something, AOL, and we couldn't get you couldn't get it then. But about 8 years later, like 2002, 2003, it really started ramping up. When you get when internet sites like Napster and Kazaa started hitting the scene, where you get everything you want for free porn, free music. And once it started, becoming free, then I was completely hooked, and I didn't know it. I didn't have any idea that I was an addict. I didn't know I was addicted to porn.
You didn't know what?
Sorry?
You didn't know what?
I didn't know I was addicted to porn. I was all the telltale signs were there. I was doing it every day, multiple times a day, sneaking off. I didn't have like smartphones back then, but I would sneak off and watch any computer that I could if I had enough time. I would find a way, like any addict. But that was my will, and so I found a way. And that went on for a long time. We'll say hardcore from about 10 years, so 01 or 02, to about 2011.
And how old were you between those periods?
I was from all my 20s, 20 to 30. All my 20s were spent, just in active porn addiction.
Consumed with this addiction, yeah.
Yeah. And it was horrible, because there was all this information around me about, people were like, oh yeah, if you watch that stuff too much, you start losing your respect for women, and you start looking at women in an unfavorable light, like in the light that they don't really care to be looked at. And it was true. And it also started really started isolating me. I started to isolate from it. I wouldn't go out and socialize, or I wouldn't talk to girls or anyone really, but I wouldn't talk to girls in public. I had zero confidence. If I saw a girl I liked, I'd absolutely shell up and go home and watch porn.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, do you know what happened then? You said when you were at the end of your 20s.
Oh, well, what happened was I I moved to, when I moved to New York City about 2011, I just I wanted to, I was also, before I moved, while I was watching porn, I was also smoking drugs. And I wanted to stop smoking drugs, more than anything. I didn't really care about the porn that much, but the drugs was really starting to get to me. The fact that I knew I couldn't stop.
You couldn't hide the addiction to drugs.
I couldn't stop. It was like, oh man, I want to, and I tried my damnedest myself, and that would get me 100 days. The most I went was 100 days, and I was, nobody can take that away from me. It was a lot. But after the 100 days, like on the 101st day, then I was smoking even more drugs and worse drugs. Like that. So, but the porn, I couldn't go for more than 4 days at that time. And, but, I started researching on the internet about porn addiction in 2011, and I called some outfit. I was in New York City, and I called some outfit out in California, and I said, well, I had a conversation with someone, and I said, well, they said, yeah, we can help you. I said, how can you help me? And they said, well, when you have the urge to watch porn and masturbate, don't do that and call us instead. And I said, you gotta be kidding me.
And wait, now who was this person?
I have no idea. It was like when you Google porn addiction.
I see. Okay.
It was some business, and so that didn't happen. I mean, that was one phone conversation, and like that. And these dogs. I'm at a lake. I'm sorry. And but when I really started getting a hold of it was when I discovered the 12-step groups around it, and started sitting in a room with other like-minded people, and people being the operative word. I was sitting in there with people who had absolutely just as much shame, if not more, than I had, and who were just at the end of their rope like I was. Mm-hmm. We all sit in a room, and all sit in a circle and talk about it.
This was Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous?
I started in SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous, and then really I belong in SAA, but I like SLA people. Those are my people. The only difference is that I'm not so hardcore addicted to porn as I am unhealthy relationships.
Okay.
That's what the love addiction is.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I understand it.
Mm-hmm. And so that
was that?
That was in around 2012 or so?
At the end of 2012. And it was about 8 months later I met you.
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, Dino came to my RCIA class. And fortunately, I had already had a student who was wrestling with overcoming pornography and masturbation, and I had gone to a meeting with him of, I think it was Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, there's also Sex Addicts Anonymous. They're similar, but they have a slightly different emphasis. Would you say that Sex Addicts Anonymous is more of an emphasis on pornography, Dino?
Yeah, absolutely. Sex Addicts Anonymous is porno and hookers. Solicited sex.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What did you just say? It's what?
Yeah, it's Sex Addicts Anonymous is porn, pretty much porn, and or prostitutes, like contractual sex.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, I went to a meeting and I was so deeply impressed. And my strongest impression that I came away with was that these were people who felt that they were not lovable, and that they were engaging in this behavior because it made them feel temporarily like they were.
That's exactly right.
And but anyway, when you came to the RCIA, you were already on board with Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous and committed to trying to live a chaste life,
Correct.
Which was fantastic. So, and of course, this program, Sex and Love Addicts or Sex Addicts Anonymous, it's a 12-step program, so they all have a very big spiritual component, don't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's about not making God the center of the universe instead of whatever your idea of God being the center of the universe instead of ruling your world instead of whatever it is you happen to be obsessed with at that time: alcohol, porn, another person, food, whatnot.
Did being in the program lead to your becoming a Catholic?
Oh, absolutely. It was 95. It was 90, probably 95% program.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it happened was beautiful as far as the timing is concerned, because it was just I had the time, and it was available, and I had already met you. I was already in class, but I think I'd been in class for like a month or two, and that's when I found out that my late father was a Catholic. I didn't know that until I was already. And then once I realized that, and once I learned that, I mean, I was that was the other 5%. I was 100% in.
Well, so Dino, what does it when somebody joins a 12-step program? How hard is it to give up the behavior? Is it how much easier does it become when you're part of a group?
Yeah, I mean, that really does depend. It kind of depends on if you have any religious abuse growing up. It's my experience that I find people who grew up Catholic, strict Catholic, and they have an idea that God is this punishing man up in the sky, waving his pointing his finger down at you, and that's just the idea. And that is like the first step in like letting go of whatever it is that's bothering you, because you have to change. You really kind of have to open your mind to everything, unlearn everything that you've learned growing up, and start over. For some people, it's next to impossible. But if you, like they say, if you let your feet get you there, you sit in a room somehow, and nobody can explain how, but somehow it'll work. And
so there's something, isn't there some slogan about bring the body and the mind will follow?
Yeah.
Now,
I think that's it.
So is it a big challenge for you on a daily basis to be chaste?
Right now, I've been in almost 5 years, and it was for 4 of those years.
Yeah.
I just started working 6 months ago. So 4 of those years, it was just program. That was priority in my life. And there's another, and the 12-step rooms are full of sayings, and one of the sayings is that anything you put in front of your recovery, you're going to lose, and I found that out the hard way multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
It was God really telling me that, like, you are taking care of this right now for 4 years. So anything else I tried to do, if I tried to work, if I tried to do anything, not go to group, it was nasty. It blew up and imploded, whatever. So I say that because my diet consisted strictly of just SAA and SLA groups for 4 years, reading literature, flipping, watching lots of porn, watching different kinds of porn that I hadn't seen before entering into the program. So like I would watch all. I've seen all kinds of porn, like everything, except for kiddie porn. But I've seen all, like everything, and that wasn't like an issue before. I only watched really like one kind of porn, but I watched all.
I'm not exactly following this, Dino. You're saying that after you joined the program, you were watching this stuff?
Yeah. After I joined it's kind of a vital part of changing. Is that you have to allow yourself to make mistakes and slip. I mean, this stuff is.
Yeah.
There's nobody's really going to come in. Not like,
and stop right away, right? Or stop permanently, right?
Yeah. It's a big, bad monster, and it's just one person, even with a group. Like nobody comes in and just that's it. They're done.
Right.
Nobody.
Okay. But now in year 5. Is it getting easier?
Oh yeah. Now in year 5, I have a level of awareness around it where like I know what it does to me, and I look at the people in it. I'm not so attracted to the people in it. I look at them as children of a lesser God, to tell you the truth. And I feel kind of sorry for them, and it just doesn't do it for them. And fortunately for me, I'm a love addict, so I'm only half a sex addict. I'm not a full-blown, like 100% sex addict. So it's easier for me to stay away from porn because porn is not my everything.
Then from people who are
not in a relationship. Sorry. Sorry, what's that?
What's that?
I said an unhealthy relationship is way more appealing to my fitness than porno. But it's still to answer your question, it's really, really difficult at first. I mean, it's designed that way. It's designed to look overwhelming so that you don't even try to stop.
Yeah. When you first join the program, you mean?
Yeah, when you first join.
They don't even put an emphasis on it right away.
Right. I mean, it's overwhelming.
You need a little healing first, I guess, from the love and the support of the group.
I mean, this is on top of all the other stressors that are in your life already.
Yeah.
So some people, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah. Let me see, Dr. Kleponis, have you joined us?
Yes, I have.
Hi, Doctor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
This is Dr. Kleponis, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, is a leading expert on overcoming pornography addiction. Doctor, have you been listening to Dino's story?
Yes, I have, and believe me, I've heard it before from many other men.
Yes. Doctor, how did you become involved in treating people for pornography and sex addiction?
Well, actually, I kind of fell into it by accident. My training is in marriage and family therapy, and I've been in practice for over 20 years now. And when I began practicing, I made two decisions. Number one, I wanted to work from a Catholic perspective because I knew that bringing the Catholic faith would bring true healing into the therapeutic process. I also wanted to work with men and the issues that they dealt with. And so over the years, I worked with a lot of men, I've worked with a lot of couples, a lot of families, and so forth. Close to 10 years ago now, what happened was there was a shift in my clientele. More men were coming to me who were struggling with pornography addiction. In fact, for many of the married men, it was actually their wives that were contacting me seeking help. So I saw that there was this trend here, and I realized that I needed to study this and figure out what was going on. And when I did my research, what I discovered was that there is this huge epidemic of internet pornography addiction going on out there, but nobody wanted to talk about it, including most Catholics. They didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
This is about 10 years ago you're talking about, right?
Yeah. The
fact early
is
days.
There was a huge problem. Yeah. There was a huge problem. Someone had to do something about it, so I decided to go back to school and retool and study and get certified in the treatment of sexual addiction, which is what I did. I also developed the first Catholic recovery program for pornography addiction, simply because that's what the men were looking for, and there wasn't any out there. There were plenty of really good Protestant programs out there, but nothing that was Catholic. So that's what I did after some prayer and discernment. I realized that maybe God's calling me to create one, which is what I did. And this is what I've been doing for the past 10 years, is really focusing my practice on the diagnosis and treatment of sexual addiction, and then more specifically pornography addiction.
Well, God bless you. We all thank you at the bottom of our heart, because it's such a terribly serious problem. How many people do you think are addicted to pornography? What percent?
Oh, if you're talking about men, I would say about 60%.
60.
If you're talking women, I would say maybe 30 to 40%. Right? It is that pervasive.
I've been hearing figures like that. It's really, so it's just an overwhelming problem. I've heard, I think it was on your website, Dr. Integrity Restored, that I saw that experts are calling pornography the new crack cocaine.
Exactly.
But except unlike crack, you don't have to pay any money for it, and it's totally accessible, right?
This is the new drug of choice, and it's because of the 5 A's. It's affordable, accessible, anonymous, accepted, and aggressive. Right? It's affordable. It's free. You have to go out there and buy drugs and alcohol. This stuff is free. You can get as much as you want online.
Right. And it's really, in a certain sense, maybe this is not a theologian would get annoyed with me, but in a certain sense, it's not our fault. I mean, it's like somebody handing out cocaine in the streets.
Oh yeah.
And if somebody is young and suffering and doesn't know any better, has never been told that it's wrong, easy, isn't it, to get sucked in?
Yeah. So, like I said, it's affordable, it's accessible, it's just a click away. Right? And most pornography today is actually viewed on portable devices, laptops, cell phones, tablets. It's interesting. Back in the 1990s, Visa credit cards had a slogan for their commercials, which I think applies very well to pornography today. And the slogan was, "It's everywhere you want it to be." Right? That's what pornography is today, right? It's anonymous. It's very easy to hide. It's not like being drunk in public or being high in public.
Right. Like Dino said that the thing that brought him into recovery initially was wanting to get over an addiction to what was it, to grass, do you know? Or?
Yeah, I had I couldn't stop smoking weed, particularly.
And that was harder for you to hide. So.
Yeah. And it was harder to get. I couldn't stop.
So
I couldn't stop.
It is a hidden addiction. Okay. Usually, it isn't until something really severe happens that a person comes in for treatment. For example, a person can lose his job because he's been viewing pornography at work, or his wife walks out on him, or he contracts a sexually transmitted disease. For many of the men, their wives discover the addiction because the wives contracted a sexually transmitted disease. They got it from their husbands, who got it from the prostitutes, and you can imagine how devastating that is. But this is what happens. So that brings them in. All right.
So you mentioned, doctor, when somebody starts first of all, why is pornography so addictive?
Okay, well, let me finish, okay? The 5 A's is very important, okay? It's affordable, accessible, anonymous. It's acceptable, all right? Today, in today's culture, it's acceptable for men, particularly young men, to view pornography. They will talk about it openly. It's not a big deal for them. And finally, it's aggressive, and this is where we talk about the new crack cocaine, all right? When you drink alcohol, you have to wait for it to go through your bloodstream to finally get to your brain to feel the buzz, all right? But with cocaine, it's right through the nose, right to the brain, instant gratification. And that's what we find with pornography, right through the eyes, right to the brain, instant gratification, right? Now, traditionally with drugs, we would start out with gateway drugs. Alcohol leads to marijuana, leads to cocaine, leads to crack, leads to heroin, and so forth, okay? With internet pornography, there is no gateway drug. You log on immediately. You are in the most hardcore form of pornography. It's like going straight to crack cocaine, and it has that effect on the brain, particularly for a young person whose brain is still developing. This is what happens. And this is why it is so addictive. Now, you're talking about why is pornography so addictive? Well, when we look at addictions, essentially there are two categories of addictions. There are chemical addictions, and then there are process addictions. Chemical addictions is what we're most familiar with. That's drugs and alcohol, where we're putting a foreign chemical into our bodies. Process addictions, with them, you're not putting a foreign chemical, but you're engaging in a behavior that has the same effect on the brain. The most common process addiction is gambling addiction. You see that person at the casino, they're in front of that slot machine, and they're totally mesmerized by it. They're experiencing a real high from that, right? The same thing happens with pornography. For example, with men, the thing we have to understand is that men, we are visually stimulated. We see a beautiful girl walk by, we look, it's automatic. In fact, a male brain can easily pick out erotic images. So we could be looking at 1,000 different things. If one of them is erotic, our brains are going to pick it out and say, hey, pay attention to this. This is important. Now, when this happens, there are a series of chemical reactions that occur in a man's brain that create that high feeling, that create that excitement. The primary one is dopamine. Dopamine is released in huge amounts, and it creates a high feeling. It creates that excitement. It's a similar excitement a person may get on a roller coaster, or bungee jumping, or doing other types of thrilling activities. All right? And, of course, the brain loves this. Okay? Another chemical called delta phos B, it does a couple of things. First of all, it oversensitizes the pleasure center of the brain in the limbic system, but then it also desensitizes the brain to that dopamine. Right? Here's that tolerance, so you need more dopamine to get the same effects. The person is constantly going back more and more to the pornography. A third chemical is called norepinephrine. Now, this has several jobs. The first one is, we call it the snapshot chemical. A lot of men say that whenever they view pornography, it kind of gets burned into their brain and is there for a while. Right? Norepinephrine does this. It burns those images in. This is why men don't even need to look at pornography to masturbate. All we have to do is close our eyes, and we have a whole parade of images. Okay? Norepinephrine also activates the autonomic nervous system, so when a man is looking at pornography, his heart will beat faster, his breathing will get heavier. Some men may begin to sweat. Right? And norepinephrine also, it ramps up the body for sexual release. It's like winding up a spring. All right? So you've got this dopamine, the delta phos B, you've got the norepinephrine, you've got them all going on, and it's creating this huge excitement and this tension that can only be relieved with an orgasm. So the man masturbates. Now, with the orgasm, opiate chemicals are released into the brain, providing a tremendous sense of euphoria. And after it's over, there's this tremendous feeling of relaxation, right? So you have the image, the fantasy, the excitement, stimulation, arousal, tension, orgasm, euphoria, relaxation. That is a very powerful drug. And the brain says, wow, this is incredible. This is the best feeling we've ever experienced. Let's go back to this. All right? So, but then what happens after the relaxation, there's this crash. We call it a dopamine crash, where the person comes down from it and they feel really awful. They're feeling sad and lonely and depressed and anxious, and it's just a terrible thing. And, of course, nobody wants to feel that way, so the brain says, hey, we know where to go to get over this. Let's go back to the pornography. So
how long does it take for this crash to come on after?
It can be a matter of minutes. It can be an hour or two. But that crash, we call it the dopamine hangover, that could even last a week or two. The brain doesn't want that, so it goes back to the pornography. Now, that's the physical side, how it's affecting the brain. There's another side to this addiction, which is the emotional side, where people use pornography and sex to ease the pain of deep emotional wounds. So what happens is they discover pornography early in their life, maybe in their early teens or whatever, and this little voice deep down inside says, hey, this makes us forget about all of our problems. This makes us feel good. This is the ultimate escape, so let's keep going back to this. And, of course, because the effects are temporary, you have to keep going back to it over and over again. All right? And this is where a person also becomes emotionally dependent on this drug to keep that pain at bay. So you have both the physical side and the emotional side of the addiction both working together, which also makes it extremely addictive. And this is what is happening now. People often ask, well, doesn't the same process in the brain chemical process happen between a husband and wife who are, having sex? Yes, it does, but it's tempered. It's tempered by a relationship. And because of this, after the orgasm, you don't have this dopamine crash. Instead, you have this contentment. You have it, and this is what's happening. And what's happening in the brain? Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is there. See, with pornography, you don't get that. It keeps you from crashing. It keeps you from crashing. Instead, you feel loved, you feel connected, you feel that intimacy. All right, this is it. I compare sex and pornography to fire. Viewing pornography and masturbating, it's like lighting a match. It flares up bright, it's fun, it's exciting, but then it goes out very quickly, and it never satisfies. Sex in a healthy marriage is like building this slow-burning fire that grows bigger and bigger. It may not be exciting all the time, but it's far more satisfying. All right. Unfortunately, our culture, the media, particularly the pornography industry, has convinced men that sex with pornography is far more exciting and far more fulfilling than sex in a healthy marriage. All right, we bought that lie. We drank the Kool-Aid, and this is what we're dealing with today. And that's the addiction in a nutshell.
Okay. And are most people do most people who use pornography become addicts?
We don't know. Right? I would say a lot of them do, many of them don't. It depends on, there are too many variables in there. But, my belief is let's not tempt the devil here. Don't even try to get involved in it. I mean, that's like saying, do most people who drink alcohol become alcoholics? Well, no, but, why tempt it?
Right. Well, if 60% of men today are addicted to pornography, obviously enough. It's enough.
Enough I would say yes. I would say yes.
Doctor, so if somebody has a pornography addiction, maybe they don't even recognize that it's an addiction, but they can't stop. What should they do?
Okay. Well, first of all, seek help. Seek help of a qualified therapist, a mental health professional who can really sit down and talk to them and help them figure out, are they really addicted to this? Is this a problem? And then if they are, In most cases, they are. If you feel you have a problem, chances are you really do have a problem.
Right.
But that person then can guide you in developing a successful recovery program, right? And there's a lot of good help out there that people can find to overcome this addiction. Recovery and freedom are possible.
It must feel to a lot of people like it's not possible.
A lot of people feel very helpless. They feel a lot of discouragement. They tried over and over again. They've asked God for help and nothing's happened. But really, help is possible.
Okay. So, what are the elements of a good? So, in addition to going to see a mental health professional,
okay.
What are the elements of a good recovery program?
There are 7 points to a good, healthy recovery program. All right, and this is what I did when I developed my program. I developed the first Catholic recovery program. It's called the Integrity Starts Here Recovery Program. And what I did is I looked at several successful recovery programs and I asked one question: what works? Let's keep what works and let's get rid of what doesn't. And I boiled it down to 7 points, and let me briefly explain them. All right. Point number 1, I call honesty, self-knowledge, and commitment. This is where you admit you have the problem. Right? There's no denial. You take full responsibility for the problem, for the addiction, for the consequences, and your recovery, and you're committed to doing whatever it takes to recover. All right. Now, self-knowledge means knowing what your weaknesses are, so we uncover what the triggers are that can lead a person into using pornography. It could be loneliness, it could be anger, it could be stress, it could be anything. We look at what those triggers are. We identify their danger zones, those times, places, and situations where they're more likely to fall. And with that information, we develop the strategies to avoid using pornography. I call them battle plans, right? You need to have some good battle plans. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is purifying your life. We get rid of all pornography. We get rid of all access to it. We make sure it doesn't come back. Here's where we make sure all of your use of technology is monitored. Here's where we work on setting clear boundaries in your life with people, places, things, technology, situations, anything that would lead you back into pornography. We talk about guarding your eyes in a healthy way, respecting women. All right, that's all about purifying your life. Point number 3 is support and accountability. You cannot do it alone. There are no lone rangers in recovery. You need to surround yourself with other people who understand the struggle, who are going to be there to support you and keep you accountable. And guess what? You're going to do the same for them. It's a team approach. This is why they call it a fellowship. I go back to my old pal Bill Wilson, the founder of AA. He had a great quote. He said, "I've figured out that the best way for one drunk to stay sober is to help another drunk stay sober." And that's why they call it a fellowship. And you'll also be working on the 12 steps, which to me are gold. It's wisdom for life. You don't have to be addicted to anything to work the 12 steps and benefit from them. But it's a great guide for achieving and maintaining that sobriety. Okay. Point number 4 is counseling, and that's getting to the root cause of it, because the reality is that the sexual behavior is the symptom, all right? The question is, what is the root cause of it? What is it that is driving you to go back to it over and over again? And it's like your other caller said, growing up in a family, father abandoned him, he was an alcoholic. I mean, there's so many different issues that a person is dealing with, and oftentimes people, they carry these deep wounds for so many years, they don't even realize they're there, but they are there. This is what they're using the pornography, or this is where we hear the term self-medicating. So it's about, uncovering these wounds, addressing them, resolving them, and healing them. Because if you don't address the root cause and resolve it, any sobriety you have is just white knuckling it. Right?
And obviously, of course, I had another student, like Dino, who had gotten into a pornography addiction when he was 10. And there were a lot of painful situations in his family. His father was an addict. My student was learning disabled and had a very demanding mother with very high expectations for academic achievement. There were a lot of. But if 60% of American men are addicted to pornography, then obviously, it's just a very I mean, is that also tied to wounds, emotional wounds? I suppose
definitely.
Most people do have emotional wounds, right?
Yeah.
In the fallen world.
We all do. We all do. But I'll give you a good example. You look at divorce. All right. Mm-hmm. How many kids are growing up in divorced homes? Now, today we often downplay the effects of divorce on children because divorce is so common in our culture. But divorce is a trauma for children.
Yeah.
It is a very deep wound that is rarely ever addressed. So there are many.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. There are many.
And what are the figures now of the percent of children growing up without their father in the home is huge, right? What, over 40%?
It's over 40% now. Yeah. So there's a lot going on there. All right. Yeah. So this is it. This is where the counseling is so important. There needs to be some healing. Okay. Mm-hmm. Point number 5 is a spiritual plan. You need God. All right. And like your caller said, a lot of people have very deep wounds in regard to the Lord. Their image of God often is someone who's very demanding, very angry, and leads them to feel very unloved or unlovable. Mm-hmm. And we need to work on changing that. Another thing that they need to understand is how God really is actively involved in their recovery, and He's intimately involved. And the problem boils down to knowing the difference between a healing and a cure. Right? Mm-hmm. A cure is instant. A healing takes time. Right? Mm-hmm. And most people, when they turn to God for help, they pray every day, Lord, take it away, take it away, take it away. What they're praying for, what they're looking for is a cure. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, God could do that. He could snap His fingers and cure them, but what would that do for their relationship with God? Not much. They'd say, thanks a lot, God, I'll come back when I need you. All right? You think in the Scripture, Jesus cured the 10 lepers. How many came back and thanked Him? Like 1.
Right,
okay?
Right.
Instead of a cure, what God is offering is a healing. Now, a healing takes time, but in this process, God's saying, hey, let's walk for a while. Let's talk for a while. Let's get to know one another. Because what's His deepest desire for us? Relationship, intimacy. And there's where the healing starts, And it's also through the people God brings into your life, through your therapist, through your recovery group, through your sponsor, through all these wonderful people. This is it. So once people really understand how God is actively involved in their recovery, this is where their relationship with God starts to really heal and become healthy. Right? And, with all the people I work with, I always recommend that they find a good spiritual director that they can work with on this and a good confessor.
So they need. They need to be loved. Right?
Yes.
To experience that they are loved. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Doctor. I'll come back to this.
I'm just saying. So this is a very important part of it. And of course, that experience of being loved. That's what they're also going to find in their support group, their 12-step group, with their therapist. I mean, these are, for some people, this will be the first time that they've ever experienced any real unconditional love.
Yeah.
So it can be healing. All right, that's point number 5. Point number 6 is education. In any type of recovery program, there's going to be an educational component, understanding the addiction, the dynamics of it, the roots of it, the healing process, recovery, all of that. So there's going to be some education. I know in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's the white book that they read. So, in AA, there's the big book. There's always that educational component. Mm-hmm. Point number 7 is virtue. If you're going to fight a vice, you have to do it with virtue. And I have all my clients work on growing in virtue. And what are those virtues? Well, honesty, courage, patience, perseverance, faith, hope, and love, all of that. Because the ultimate goal of recovery isn't simply stopping the use of the drug. The ultimate goal is transformation, becoming a new creation in Christ, becoming the man or the woman that God created you to be. All right? And working on virtue is a big part of that. These are the 7 points of a healthy recovery program. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. But you need to be working on all of them. And it's been my experience when people are committed to that and they work on this, they experience the success and they get excited about recovery. They're actually grateful they're in recovery because it's led them to a whole new life that's healthy and new healthy relationships. Yes.
Yeah. I saw that in the life of my one student who joined Sex Addicts Anonymous. He didn't know how to have an intimate relationship. until he went to the program.
Yeah.
And there he had friends who loved him.
The 12-step group, the meeting, I'm going to get really clinical on you, becomes the social laboratory where it's safe enough to really take the risk to be vulnerable, to be real, to be authentic with other people and experience that love and acceptance. Right? And that is so crucial. This is why people end up going to these meetings for the rest of their lives. Do they need to go? No. But it's that wonderful, safe place where they experience that unconditional love.
Yes.
And that's so important.
Now, you, on your website, you listed some of the assumptions that people have who get caught up in addictions. Well, one of them was that I'm not lovable. Could you tell us what those are?
Okay. Most people who struggle with addiction, and it doesn't matter what the substance is, most people will generally adopt 5 core beliefs about themselves. And they are, number 1, I'm unworthy of being loved. Number 2, if people really knew me, they would reject me. Number 3, I can't count on anyone, even God, to meet my needs. So number 4, I need to find something that I can control that will meet my needs. And therefore, number 5, pornography and sex is my greatest need and source of comfort. Right? Now, that's true for any addiction. You could take out pornography and sex. You could replace it with drugs, alcohol, gambling, food, video games, you name it. Right? But this is what's happened now. Where do they adopt these core beliefs? It's from those early experiences in life. What were the messages they got from the people that were there that were supposed to love them? Their mother, their father, teachers, coaches, clergy, whomever. Right? And it doesn't mean that they had bad parents or bad people in their life. Chances are those people were also very wounded themselves and were not able to convey that sense of love and value and worth. Right? Often when I work with people, we'll draw up their family tree going back several generations, and you can see the woundedness there that just keeps going back.
Now, so you say that a lot of the people who come to you are successful in being able to not be, to have pornography make their lives unmanageable. They can overcome the addiction.
They can. It takes time.
Happy, healthy relationships.
They can, yes, and they do. Now, it takes time, and there are falls along the way. As your caller said, we don't, when it comes to victory, we call it progressive victory. It's not instant victory. It's not overnight victory. It's progressive. But it does happen in people's lives. Right? And I've seen the transformation, and that's what makes it exciting for me. Okay? And now, and it can take months, it can take years, but it is possible. And as people work on this, they do experience that victory, that success. And I tell people, there will be falls along the way, but if you do have a fall, all right, we'll take a look at it. We'll see what was going on there. What was the trigger? What was the danger zone? What can we do to prevent it from happening again? In fact, I call them SLIPs. And SLIP, S-L-I-P, stands for short lapse in progress.
Oh, very good.
But we use it, and we help them to move on.
I know. This former student of mine used to say that he was pretty much okay most of the time, but then he would feel the urge to come on very much, to act out. And if he could just hold out till he got to a meeting, when he got to the meeting, the desire dissipated. Because whatever it was that was driving it, the feeling of being unlovable or lonely or whatever it was, assuaged by the fellowship of the meeting.
Exactly. And you don't even have to wait till you get to the meeting. What I recommend to the men that I work with is, when you go to a meeting, get to know the other people there. And you get their names and their phone numbers. All right? And if you're struggling, you need to call somebody.
Make a call.
Talk to them. To make a call, talk to them. It's amazing what just a 5-minute phone call will do. It can talk you down off that ledge. Right? In fact, I tell the men, you need to making phone calls every single day.
Yes.
Mary, this is Bob. I
Yes.
have a question for Dino. Dino, how's your life now?
Bob, is it Bob?
Yes.
It's richer and fuller than it's ever been. You know, I have God is my higher power, and I talk to him every day. I have a relationship with him, you know, and my recovery is not at all perfect, but I'm in it. I'm a lifer, and I live in constant gratitude and constant prayer. I pray all the time. So
beautiful. And you said you're very involved in your parish, Dino.
I am, and it's just, you know, it's light years better than any alternative, especially the path I was going down. So it's richer and it's fuller, and you know, it's apples and valleys. Of course, I got highs and lows. But I tell you the truth, Bob, the lows aren't near as low as they once were. You know, that is the truth.
There's one more thing that I want to just put a very important point about sin and addiction. Doctor, if somebody has an addiction, then the guilt is very much diminished, right?
Well, yeah, the culpability, the responsibility, because what happens with addiction is you lose your free will.
Yes.
I know so many people, when that need for the fix comes over them, it's like a moth to a flame.
Right.
They cannot help themselves. It has taken over their lives. Now, however, that doesn't take away their responsibility to recognize that they have a problem and to seek help. Right?
Right.
So, and I tell them, and you know, if you know you have an addiction, and you've taken responsibility for it, and you're seeking help, and you're doing your best, and you have a fall, all right,
yeah.
You know, don't worry about it.
Right. It's not a mortal sin if you don't have free consent of the will.
Exactly.
And you're doing what you can. Yeah. I mean, and the Catechism says that.
Yeah. May I say something here?
Yes.
Yeah. So I do struggle with this part right here, as far as the guilt associated with watching porn or having anonymous sex. I go into confession, and one of my preachers says, you know, and I told him, I'm like, I don't know if this is a mortal sin or the other one, girls. The other
one. Venial sin, yeah, that's more right.
Menial. But
venial,
you know, I was like, but I feel bad. And he says, look, you're not doing anything wrong. Like, but you know, when you're doing anything that you're not proud of, it's like you're chaining yourself to it, and it's strangling you. You know, so you know, and then he gives me repentance. I do that, and I feel better.
Yeah.
You know, I do. I feel better, but I do struggle with that aspect of it, as far as if it's or not.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to close in just a few seconds, but I just know that the Catechism says that if you have an addiction, your moral culpability is very much diminished. Okay?
Yes.
And it's probably not a mortal sin for you.
Right, and I take advantage of that moral.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the part I feel bad about.
Mary,
okay, well, listen, I want to thank you so much, both of you, Dr. Kleponis and Dino, for joining us today. If you want to know more, Dr. Kleponis has a wonderful website. Doctor, what is it? Your website is what, peterkleponis.com?
We have two websites. There's peterkleponis.com. and that's my personal website if you want to learn about my recovery program. And then there's integrityrestored.com, which is our educational website.
Okay, thank you. And we are going to have to close, but I just want everyone to know that Dr. Kleponis treats people by phone and by Skype as well as in person. So thank you so much for joining us today. And
thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Okay.
Bob.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.